I want to thank Stephanie's sisters, Nancy and Julie, for being here. They love Stephanie. They have known her as Stephen. They grew up as children together, and they have been very supportive and are glad that you're here too. This is one of the favorite things that Stephanie wrote that I want to share with you. The light of authenticity is pure. It contains not even a trace of darkness. It is unquestionably honest, undeniably real, absolute truth. The light of authenticity shines in harmony with the soul. It illuminates correctness and eliminates all defensible misperception of incorrectness. The light of authenticity provides peace. It cannot be extinguished. It will always shine with unwavering perfection. Good afternoon.
We arrive to this place and time both weary and grateful. We are gathered here to celebrate and lift up the life of Stephanie Mott, a woman whose life embodied the power of transformation and the sacred power of community. Grieving is different for each of us, and yet we come together in order to find hope, comfort, and new possibilities, because as long as we are alive, there is still an opportunity for each of us to experience the healing and transformative power of love. Today we celebrate Stephanie's life and the gifts we each received from her. The gifts of her deep and loving presence and her strength of purpose and vision. We celebrate her in song because she would want us to sing, right? And we celebrate her in stories, our stories, and Bible verses, and poetry, and each other. One of her gifts was to be fully present to each person on her path. And in these stories, you will hear the threads of her compassion as well as her tenacity. And so we will begin with a remembrance from Stephanie's goddaughter, Hallie Horn, who could not be with us here today, but offered a brief video remembrance in the next slide.
Hello, my name is Hallie Horn, and I have the honor of being Stephanie Mott's goddaughter. Today, I would like to take you all on a journey on the train of life with me. Everyone has a train of life. I was just riding along on mine. The train stopped at an unexpected station, and that's when Stephanie got on my train. She sat by me, and our lives both changed. The year was 2014, about this time of the year, when Stephanie spent some cherished time here in West Plains, Missouri. She and I met through a mutual friend, Maggie Beatles, a Lawrence, Kansas native herself, and my best friend. She is the reason Stephanie entered my life forever. Being Stephanie's goddaughter is my greatest joy. She is the epitome of being a godmother and a mom to me. Mom and I got to share what we called the ordinary things in life. We shopped together as mother and daughter. We put makeup on and dressed for our mother-daughter dates. We laughed together at some of them together, like when Mr. Kitty passed away, and when my fiancé Rick passed away unexpectedly just 7 months ago. We shared a love for our man, Neil Diamond, and our song, Cracklin' Rosin, for the love of Royals baseball, the Kansas City Chiefs football, and of course, the Kansas Jayhawks. Go, KU! We love to talk about everything Kansas. K-Step, Topeka Pride, UUFT and Reverend Sarah, Transgender Faith Tour, the Equality House, and the Transgender House, now officially named the Mott House. and just about life in general. Mom explained our life in these simple words. Joy fills my heart as the most unreachable stars in the sky simply make themselves available to me on this most authentic journey of womanhood. There is nothing more amazing than to hear this incredible young woman call me Mom. Nothing in my lifetime could ever begin to fill my heart as much as this particular part of my journey. I am part of the world today, which I wasn't before. She was my rock and my everything. She never acted like it was just a job or a chore. If I needed her, she was there, whether it be physically or simply a phone call away. Someone once asked me if I could describe Mom in a few words, which was a challenge. But here's what I came up with. Brave, leader, mom, sister, friend, colleague, teacher, grandmother, determined, a force to be reckoned with, cheerleader, powerhouse, small, but mighty, funny, and love. Do love. She was the epitome of these. Another joy to Mom's life was being called Gran to my stepchildren, Brandon, who's 18, and Rhiannon, who's 16. Rhiannon and her Gran were two peas in a pod. She would always tell me how being a mom to me and a Gran to Nan and Brandon was something she longed for. They were everything to her. I remember Nan would call her Gran on the phone, just because. When Gran would come visit, everything was right in Nan's world. Besides her daddy, Gran was everything. 5 wonderful and glorious years on this train ride together. We stopped at another unexpected station where Stephanie would depart. She is no longer here with us in person, but she leaves me and everyone who knew her light and her words of wisdom. So as I'm closing this part of our journey together, I'm going to leave you all with some words of wisdom from my mom, and I hope that you all hold these words close to your heart and continue her legacy forever. Listen to the words of Stephanie Mott. The light of authenticity provides peace. It cannot be extinguished. It will always shine with an unwavering perfection. Together, one person at a time, we will change the world. Thank you all for being not only on my train, but also riding along Mom's train. Now we all carry Stephanie's light, and now it's up to us to make the change that she dreamed of. Thank you. Hello,
Her name is Hallie, and she is now my goddaughter. Stephanie left me that present. A charming young lady who is full of love. Love like Stephanie has for all of you. Her motto, do love, means more than just those words. They're what we're all about. Caring for one another, being part of a community, showing each other our care, our love, and determination to make lives better for everybody. I'm not very good at words. I'm not very good at feelings. I repress them quite often. So I just wanted to read some of Stephanie's words because they touch me, as they should. I'm going way back. This is like November of last year. And we had an election. Stephanie had some definite thoughts on the election. She did not like one of the candidates that were running for governor. And for a good reason. because he disenfranchised transgender individuals, kept them from being able to vote. I'm going to read this stuff. This is November 5th. I voted for the first time as Stephanie in 2008. Well, I was living as Stephanie, but my ID still said Stephen. My first vote as myself was cast in the Brown versus Board of Education building, and I cast it for Barack Obama. In order to exercise my right to vote, I had to out myself publicly as transgender, her presentation not matching her identification.
Hello.
2.5 years later, I testified in committee meetings in both chambers of the Kansas legislature against the voter ID bill. I met Chris Kobach in those committee meetings. Following my testimony about how this bill would disenfranchise transgender voters, Kobach stepped up to the microphone and basically just said, "No, it won't." I want you to know that this election is personal to me. This man has spent the last 8 years disenfranchising transgender voters, Kansas voters, and voters across America. If you haven't yet voted, please join me in voting Tuesday, November 6th. Hashtag vote for Laura Kelly. Hashtag no Kobach. 2 days later, died shortly after the election. There were tears, of course, as the reality began to set in that the 8 years of persecution of LGBTQ Kansans was coming to an end. Remembrance of that night 8 years ago when Brownback was elected governor, and again 4 years ago. And that horrible night, 2 years passed. And the full knowledge that anti-LGBTQ legislation will not pass in Kansas in the next 4 years, at least 4 years. No bathroom bills. Protected Kansas LGBTQ employees. Yes, there were tears. It is also about Medicaid expansion and education and tax policy and so much more. But for this transgender woman and so many LGBTQ Kansans, it is about life and death. That's what it's about, folks. It's about life and death. It is about living in a state that respects our identities and honors our love. Hashtag Governor-elect Laura Kelly. November 8th. 13 years ago on this morning, I woke up in a motel room. I think most of you have heard this story. It's her story. The night before, about 10 p.m., I poured about half a fifth of cheap whiskey down the sink. I was headed back to Lawrence, Kansas to try to regroup again. Like many times before, I was moving all I owned from a place where I was no longer able to stay to a place where I was able to stay for a limited amount of time. This time, all I owned fit in the back of my pickup truck, and the place I was going to was the home of friends in Lawrence. I spent the weekend with their help figuring out where to land. The consensus was the men's side of the Topeka rescue mission. It was a precarious place to begin the journey toward living authentically as a woman. Looking back, it was the perfect place. This morning, I wake up in my home in Topeka, a new teenager of sorts, 13 years of sobriety. How I got from that morning to this one is a story I share quite often, although happenings of this journey still seem beyond impossible, beyond imaginable. I am not well. I am better. I am not healed. I am healing. Engraved on the thousands of yellow bricks are the names of the people who have walked beside me, prepared the way for me, carried me, and challenged me. You have given me opportunity to hope in a hopeless world. The ability to cope with the demons, some of my own creation, the demons that have haunted me, and the demons that continue to try to deny my existence. You have given me tools to do magical things like pray for those who harm me. love, and forgiveness that defy logic in every other sense except that they actually work. The truth that belongs to me is ever evolving and is neither dictated by anyone else nor required for them. Strength and courage that is not of myself, but of powers far greater than myself, yet available to me at times not necessarily known to me or chosen by me, yet they are there at the exact moments they are supposed to be there. Like a teenager, I sometimes think I know everything. I sometimes think I don't know anything, and I am still trying to figure out who I am and what I want to do. What I have come to know is some of what I am not supposed to do. I'm not supposed to drink alcohol or do drugs. I am neither more than nor less than anyone on the planet. I'm not supposed to be silent in the face of oppression. I am not supposed to harm others, even those who harm me. I am not supposed to live as a man. Blessed be. December 2nd, an announcement. This was a very, very difficult decision in Stephanie's life. Whether she would do what she can to help out in the Kansas legislature for all LGBT, or to take care of those clients she had at Vallejo. She asked me what my opinion was, and I told her, do what your heart tells you. I cannot tell you what to do. I think she made the right decision to stay and work at Vallejo and help those clients, and she does too. It would have been nice to have another LGBT representative in the legislature, and maybe we could move things a little quicker, but that comes in time. We're working on it. Her announcement: I have decided not to pursue nomination for appointment to the Kansas House District 58 opening. Over the last 3 days, I have bounced back and forth between the value I see coming from having a transgender woman in the Kansas House of Representatives and the harm I know will come to the people I work with. I have no fear that is stronger than my faith about my ability to walk through the attacks that would be certain to come. I have no doubt about my ability to do so with a reasonable degree of grace and compassion. When I am completely honest with myself, I must realize the last 3 days have been a futile exercise for me to find an ethical reason to justify an unethical pathway, especially given the short time frame involved. When I am asked by people to help with those exceedingly difficult decisions we must all make, I simply ask them what they want to see when they look back at the decision 5 years later. My personal answer to this question is this: I want to see that I have done due diligence, and I want to know that I tried to do the right thing. Over the last 3 days, I have done my due diligence. Today, I'm not able to escape the fact that to enter the process for nomination to be appointed to the Kansas House District 58 seat would be an unethical choice. This in spite of the clear and obvious value that it has the potential to make a significant difference for many. This because of the clear and obvious harm I know will come to others should I walk away from the work I am currently doing. Then she goes on to ask, if you live in District 58 or are interested in this seat, she would encourage you to contact her, because, especially if you're a member of the LGBT community. The endless and amazing support with which she has been given over the last 13 years continues to be her strength and inspiration. We are entering into a new time with respect to the pursuit of equality and justice, and LGBT plus people in Kansas. Make no mistake, I will continue to be a significant part of these efforts. I regret that my efforts will not be from the Kansas House of Representatives, but I do not regret my decision. To do the right thing is never the wrong choice. Stephanie. On and on and on. I could go on and on and on. There's words of wisdom that stretch back years. She wrote, she blogged, she did it all. She went anywhere to educate people about what it was like to be LGBT, to tell her story, to tell how she was saved by living authentically. Her life was saved by being herself. Today, I'm not here authentically. I've got this suit and tie on. I don't do this, folks. I don't. I'm a t-shirt and blue jeans guy, but I do love. That's what I do. I do love. Thank you.
So, this is going to be hard for me also, please bear with me. I have never met a more determined, persistent, goal-oriented woman in my life. Stephanie and I spent a lot of time together traveling and talking and educating. She and I had some moments. She's my big sister, so siblings have moments. We had some moments, trust me. We bumped heads because you got two strong-headed people. But we always met in the middle. We came to a compromise. She taught me a lot of things. A couple of things that she said to me before I got out of her car the last time. The first one was, you should run for city council. I gave her a look. She said, I'm so serious. I'm like, yeah, nope, not gonna happen. But the next thing she said is powerful to me. And she said, you have to demand respect, Luke, because if you don't, they will wipe their feet all over you. I didn't think that would be the last thing she would say to me. She said it to me a lot, but this last time, it had an effect. She and I worked together on educating people about what it is like for me to be a trans man of color. Educating, even though I ended up being the only person of color in some situations. She would say, yep, you have to go and tell them your story because if you don't, they won't know what you're going through and they won't know your struggle. So I would go and I would do it and she'd be like, I think they like you. And I'm like, okay, that's good. She was very encouraging to me because I would always say to her, because we always had real conversations. And she would say to me, you have to understand that your story, people need to hear that because there's somebody going through it. And for me and where I've come from, and those of you that know me and know where I've come from, Stephanie and I always had that conversation. She said, you should not be ashamed of where you came from because it made you. So I really appreciate her doing what she did for me. She is my mentor when it comes to activism. She taught me a lot. She taught me how to have heart. And she also taught me that she is very goal-oriented. Example, sitting at an Equality Kansas meeting one evening and she said, you know what? Topeka needs to have a pride. And we all were in agreement, shook our heads. Next couple of days later, she had a venue. She had a date. She had it all pulled together. And I used to tell people all the time, hey, watch her, because she, don't let her give you an idea. Because she, man, let me tell you something, Topeka Pride made my head spin. Because it was just Topeka should have pride. And she called me, she said, we need to talk about dates. I have dates, I have a venue. I said, for what? She said, pride. I was like, oh, okay, awesome. Very goal-oriented, driven. I'm telling y'all, just driven. Y'all know, just driven. If she put it in her mind to get it done, it got done. The same thing happened with the Equality Center. It was an idea, it was a thought, it was a whatever, and the next thing I know, there's a building and there's a board. And I'm just like, okay, awesome. Man, it made my head spin, I have to tell y'all, literally. And so, I honestly have not really grieved yet. I'm just here being strong. And I think that strength comes from her. When we talked about issues of race and people of color, she was honest with me straight out. She said, Luke, look, I'm a privileged white woman. I don't know these things. That's what I have you here for, is to educate people about what it's like and what your struggle is and what's needed for that community. She said, because I don't know that part. So I respect her for that and for letting me know, hey, I don't know. I appreciate all the travels. Y'all, if you've never traveled with her, oh my God, they're always an adventure. Always an adventure. Always. Every time we went somewhere. I met a lot of great people through her. And I'm thankful for that because you guys are helping me get through this. But she's my big sister. Taught me a lot. And I hope that y'all remember her as I do. Because she was amazing. Thank you.
My name is Kimberly Doherty, and I had the pleasure of being a close friend of Stephanie Mott's for about the last 7 years. I considered Stephanie a mentor. She was the first trans friend I ever had. I am straight, I'm white, I'm middle class, I'm a mom. I drive a minivan, y'all. I live in a cul-de-sac. My fence would be white if I maintained my yard. I have privileges that are not awarded to other people. But when it comes to LGBTQ, I am not the privileged voice. I learned what I needed to learn about being an advocate from Stephanie Mott. There's 3 things I really wanted to share with you guys about Stephanie. The first thing is that Stephanie did not do small talk. She did what I'd like to call big talk. As you heard some other folks share, she'd talk about things and have conversations that weren't comfortable to have. She would talk to a group of people who maybe even identified as anti-trans. And she would sit at a table with them and talk about her experience as a trans Christian woman. She believed that your conversations and your words and the things that you put out there need to be done with a lot of thought and a lot of care, because the things we say to others last sometimes a lifetime. Some of the things that she said to me that really helped me understand her situation and her experience was that she was not a fan of Halloween. And I thought, that's ridiculous. Who doesn't love Halloween? You know, you got the kids going door to door. You know, they're usually pooped out before it's even dark. And Halloween is fantastic. And she said, Kim, I've worn a costume for more of my life than I ever care to think about. And I'm never putting the costume back on. And that changed how I viewed people who have to live in a costume. She also told me that as she began to live as a woman, she recognized that her voice got less and less heard and listened to. More people interrupted her and talked over her. Now that I know a little bit about. But what I think people should take away from her big talk is that sometimes the most uncomfortable conversations with people have the most impact.
The second thing I wanted to share is that Stephanie taught me that it's important to show up. As was commented before, she would show up anywhere, and she brought a folding table and some flyers. People would come up to her in these circumstances, and I sat behind many folding tables with Stephanie, and we spent many hours, and I stupidly attempted to chit-chat, and she would say, no, I'm talking to the people, Kim. I'm like, oh, okay. And somebody would come up and say, you know what I don't understand? I don't understand how gay people want special rights. And Stephanie would say, okay. So is your right to be married special? Is that a special right, or is that a right you're granted as a citizen? Those were difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And she was never afraid, and she never backed down from having those. She would sometimes have people come up and say, you know what I didn't see at Topeka Pride? I didn't see this, and I didn't see that. And she would say, I hear you. So you'll be providing those next year? The third thing that I wanted to share about Stephanie is, you heard other people say too, is that she did all things with love. Some of the things that she told to me that taught me a lot about the LGBTQ community is that her perspective was people who are hateful are really just scared of things they don't understand. That you can't combat hate with anger. You have to combat hate with love, because love is not going to scare somebody who's already afraid. You need to talk with love. You need to show up with love. And you need to do love. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to read some of the things that Stephanie wrote. Watch videos about Stephanie. Sometimes it's a lot in one setting. But Stephanie's words are well thought out, and they're heartfelt. She spent a great deal of time thinking about her message. And it was important for her that people understood the history behind a thing, not just the right now of a thing. Stephanie also really believed in teaching future leaders and advocates. It was really important to her that we spent time with kids in high school and through Beacon and some other groups that she was involved in. And I, like most people in their mid-30s, sometimes don't find that to be the most exciting thing in the world, is to spend a bunch of time with teenagers. But you know what? I've learned so much from this generation, because when it comes to the future of advocacy, their voices are privileged voices. When it comes to growing up in an area where it's not just about whether you are gay or straight or trans, but there's other ways that you can identify yourself and categories that people fall into, their voice is privileged. So I encourage you to have uncomfortable conversations. Talk to people of color. Talk to people in the trans community. Invite these people to break bread with you. And don't do it so you can tell them what you think about how they live and their challenge. Do it because their voice is the privilege. And if they give you the opportunity to hear out their side or their story or their perspective, that is a privilege. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Neesmith, and I use she, her pronouns. Today I'll be doing a reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 34 through 40. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. I met Stephanie in 2010 during our first semester at Washburn University, working toward our bachelor's degrees in social work. I walked into a class as an older person, sort of terrified at all these young faces I was seeing. And then I saw her, someone closer to my age, and I sat next to her. It was the smartest thing I ever did. Slowly we built a friendship, and as the semesters went on, I continued sitting next to her, learning from her. She had a way of guiding you toward a path you didn't even see for yourself. The people that she met, that she saw potential in, that she believed in, we became her students without even realizing it. After classes, we would walk to our cars and talk about what we were passionate about. I told her that LGBT youth had a huge place in my heart, that no child should ever feel unloved or unwanted because of their sexuality or gender identity. It seemed she felt the same. Stephanie told me about some people that were starting a support group for LGBT youth in Topeka. She was excited about it, but admitted she really didn't have time to get heavily involved, but she encouraged me to do so. And I went. Beacon Youth Group has been around since 2012. I am now the facilitator, and that was my start into activism. Because of that start, I have my dream job as a medical case manager at Positive Connections, formerly the Topeka's AIDS Projects. I got involved with Topeka Pride and pretty much everything else that Stephanie encouraged me, pushed me to get involved with. As I look out on this room, people here that I love, you're all in my life because of her. When I met Stephanie, my oldest child was 11 years old and not yet identifying as queer or using they, them pronouns. Phoenix got to know Stephanie, and Phoenix became another devoted student. When Phoenix was in 7th grade, they entered a regional competition called History Day. If kids score well in the regionals, they move on to nationals and all that kind of stuff. So Phoenix decided that they were going to do their project on Harvey Milk as a 7th grader in Kansas. Their teacher wasn't very supportive, saying, hey, judges might not be really happy about this, but Stephanie supported it, and that's all that Phoenix cared about. She supported it enough that she came to that day, the competition. And I'll never forget, as the judges entered the room to watch the documentary, one of them walked up the stairs and hugged Stephanie. Phoenix turned to me and smiled and said, I've got one. Spending any amount of time with Stephanie in public, the sheer number of people she knew and touched were staggering. It didn't matter what their economic status, education level, religious beliefs, or anything else were. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And that's what she would say. Stephanie treated everyone with dignity, always believing, hoping that she could reach one more person educate one more person, even if they were the only person in the room. As she herself said, all I want to do is change the world. And she did. She changed my world for sure. And now, all of us that have been her students, it's our job to continue her mission and continue to change the world. Thank you.
We invite you to join us.
So I don't look like Tom Witt. He's a little bit taller than me, not a lot. Tom asked me to share these words with you because he could not be with you today. He says, "Greetings, friends of Stephanie. I'm truly saddened that due to a sudden illness, I cannot be with you all today. I met Stephanie sometime in 2008 or 2009. By 2009, she had joined Equality Kansas and soon became a member of our state board. In 2012, she was elected chair of our board, and to the best of our knowledge, was the first transgender leader of a statewide LGBT equality and advocacy organization. Over the past decade, Stephanie's advocacy and leadership has helped define our organization and our mission. We are all better for her contribution. Stephanie's tireless dedication to Equality Kansas, to the Kansas statewide Transgender Education Project, which she founded in 2010, and to the cause of LGBT equality, laid out a path others will follow for years to come. Stephanie served unselfishly, often putting the needs of the Kansas LGBT community ahead of her own. Although we worked very closely together through the years, our styles were markedly different. If you know Tom, you know that's an understatement. As many of you know, Tom is, often aggressive and confrontational, looking to draw our opponents into public fights. Stephanie, on the other hand, approached those who attacked our community with kindness and love. She had an ability to draw people in, talk to them, and teach those who would deny us our rights that we are all children of God. Stephanie often had lessons for me as well. More than once, she pulled me back from the edge of my worst instincts. As recently as last month, Stephanie's wise and loving counsel kept me from instigating a legislative confrontation that would not have helped us achieve our goals. As I go forward in my work, I won't ask, what would Stephanie do? But rather, what would Stephanie tell me not to do? She has been and always will be my better angel. Stephanie wasn't done. She wasn't ready to finish her work on this earth. Just 2 days before her passing, we talked about getting together the following week to discuss late session strategy for our agenda. The best way to honor her memory and her work is to continue that work. We, all of us, must recommit to advocating for equality and fairness. A great warrior has fallen. We must pick up her weapons of love, kindness, and understanding and fight for those goals to which she dedicated her life. Do your part. Carry on. Tom Witt.
Hello, my name is Donna Park, and I'm the manager of the psychotherapy program at Vallejo Behavioral Health Care. I first met Stephanie in February of 2015 when I interviewed her for a practicum placement in our psychotherapy department at Vallejo as part of her master's degree program in social work. I started with my usual first question: what makes you interested in the field of social work, and in psychotherapy specifically? That was the first time I heard Stephanie's story about her journey towards living authentically as a transgender woman. She spoke very frankly about her battle with alcoholism, severe depression, and other mental health issues. She described episodes of unemployment, homelessness, severe social disconnection, and living with the daily pain of being treated as a man instead of the woman that she knew herself to be. She described the moment of change when she decided to claim her womanhood and the enormous transformation that occurred after that choice. She spoke of reaching out for help to professional treaters, family, friends, and her faith-based community. All in this massive effort to change her life around. And she had done it. Ooh, yeah. She told me then that she'd been sober for 9 years at that point. And then she went on to describe this amazing litany of accomplishments. You know, her role as a state and national advocate, and a presenter, a published author, and then this new step, working on a master's degree. So circling back to the question, why do you want to be a social worker? I want to make the world a better, more kind, and just place for people to be. Why a psychotherapist? I want to help others achieve health and life purpose. I want to give them what was given to me. Okay, so imagine, this is first time I've met Stephanie, first interview question. I signed her up for the internship, and then later, as soon as I could, I offered her a full-time job when she graduated. In accepting, she said, I feel this is someplace where I can make a difference. Imagine that. While at Vallejo, Stephanie distinguished herself as a therapist who was beloved and respected by clients and colleagues alike. Clients describe her as someone who accepted every one of them for exactly who they were unconditionally. Someone they could safely tell their stories and their secrets to. Someone who literally inspired them to live instead of die. Every single day she was with us at Vallejo, she made a difference in people's lives. She also achieved one of the things she most wanted to do. On February 20th, just a couple of weeks before her death, ironically, Stephanie passed the exam that earned her the highest clinical social work credential available in Kansas, an LSCSW, a licensed specialist clinical social worker. She was so thrilled, and so were we. In closing, Stephanie once wrote that she had longed for a very long time for just a place to be. But even more, what I needed was a place to belong, a place to grow my heart, fuel my spirit, heal my soul, shine my light. Vallejo was one of the places where Stephanie belonged. We thank her for all that she gave to us, for the fuel that she brought to our spirits and our growth, for teaching us things that we did not know, and for sharing with us her light.
We're now going to listen to one of the songs that Stephanie wrote. All I want to do is change the world.
do is change the world. All I want to do is change the world. Is there something wrong with that? Should I try for something more? All I want to do is take tomorrow and make it into something that it couldn't be before. See the child sitting there lost and all alone, wondering if she'll ever have a family of her own. But they won't allow the couple that is gay to take her home. All I want to do is change the world. All I want to do is change the world. Is there something wrong with that? Should I try for something more? All I want to do is take tomorrow and make it into something that it couldn't be before. See the child sitting there, the girl that she can't be, wondering if there'll ever come a time to set her free. Lost a transgender future in a dark society. All I want to do is change the world. All I want to do is change the world. If there's something wrong with that, should I try for something more? All I want to do is take tomorrow and make it into something that it couldn't be before. All I want to do is take tomorrow and make it into something that it couldn't be before. See the child sitting there.
Well, I've known Stephanie for several years, but I got to know her a lot better in the last year when she became a member of my Citizens Advisory Council. And I know she's very proud of that, and she did a great job. But one of the most important things she said to me, that she really felt for one of the first times that she had a voice. She had a voice in our community at that level, and that meant a lot. One of the things that when she was being interviewed on NPR, KPR News, they talked about the impact that she had on social issues in the state of Kansas. And I don't think a lot of people really realize the impact that she had on Kansas. A lot of Topekans don't know, but I know statewide, a lot of people personally don't know what all she's done for the state of Kansas and the people in the state of Kansas. If there's one word that I use to describe her, it would be universal. She universally believed in equal rights for everybody in the state of Kansas.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Pryor, and I am a gender nonconforming genderqueer and use they them pronouns. I met Stephanie Mott in 2008. I have been trying to remember how I ended up on that panel at Washburn University. I still to this day don't remember who invited me to that panel, but I went to this panel put together at Washburn University to educate a classroom on transgender people and their lives. I've been out since 1985 as a lesbian and as a transgender person since 1997, and I have spoken on more panels than I can count. This panel in particular, though, I met Stephanie Mott, and I met my brother in love and activism, Luke Malik Ben Simone. And I don't even know what happened next, except for that Stephanie Mott found out that I was used to speaking on panels and would speak anywhere, anytime, anyplace. And when Stephanie Mott found out that you did something, she was always willing to ask. She was amazingly respectful of my life and knew that I had 2 small children. So she would take what she could get from me. I went back through my text messages from her over Facebook in the last week, and there were just date after date when she would list some tiny little town in Kansas and just Pittsburgh, April 23rd with a question mark. And so for the first couple of years after I met Stephanie in 2008, I would call her, or she would call me, and there would be a panel, and it was me and Luke and Stephanie. And the next panel was Luke and Stephanie and me. And then me and Luke and Stephanie. In 2010, when she formed K-Step, she had a commitment that we would go to small towns all over Kansas and educate. That has always been my commitment, as I was raised in a small town of 500 people, and I was a suicidal youth that landed in a psychiatric ward at the age of 18 and found out that being gay is not a mental illness. Those panels in those small towns, Luke would always ride with Stephanie. He doesn't drive, but being from a small town, I always needed my own getaway car, so I would drive myself. Sometimes there were literally 4 people that would show up. But I'm telling you that all 3 of us delivered the same talk to 4 people that we would deliver to 40 people. And we would stay and talk, and all the time, every time I sat down next to Stephanie after telling that story, she would look over at me with that glint and that smile and say, "I never get tired of hearing that." I knew her story by heart. I know his by heart. He knows mine by heart. We could probably switch up and tell each other's. Because there's something that Stephanie Mott and I have in common. 2 things, actually. The first is that we understand that our level of activism had to come from personal experience. Lately, I've had several young activists say things to me like, if people want to know about me, they should just Google it. But the thing is that you can't Google courage. You can't Google triumph. You can't Google raising up to be your most authentic self, rising from ashes. And all 3 of us survived our lives to then rise up and be authentic and powerful human beings. And Stephanie Mott knew that taking the 3 of us to any small town was going to change hearts and minds for the children that lived there. And that is why we were there. The bottom line, and the biggest thing that I had in common with Stephanie Mott, is that we were clear, and Luke and I are clear, that our job is to love the transphobia out of people. I do want to share one funny story because it's my quintessential Stephanie Mott story. When we first met, and somewhere there's an audio recording somewhere of a bunch of us sitting around, and there were 3 trans women, and I think Luke and I, and we were swapping stories about privilege and about how they lost IQ points and I gained them, and then all of a sudden I had sunshine flying out my ass with white male privilege, and that they had lost theirs. And my favorite story is when Stephanie tells the story of going in to the auto parts store to look for a wheel for her lawnmower. Now you remember that Stephanie was raised on a farm in Eudora, She knew her way around farm implementations and equipment and could certainly fix her own lawnmower wheel. But now she was in woman skin in the auto parts store. So she goes to the counter and asks, "I'm looking for a wheel for my lawnmower." And of course she knew exactly the dimensions that she needed and everything. Tells the guy, so he goes back, gets the part, comes back out. And then as he's mansplaining to her, he is saying these words to Stephanie. "Now when you get home, you tell him that he is going to need to use axle grease to put this on." And with that gorgeous smile and that glint in her eye, she would say, "Oh, I'll tell him." As a transgender activist, there's just not that many of us. And like I said, in the beginning there was Luke and me and Stephanie, and then 2 years later she created K-Step, and then the only thing that changed was I got a name tag. Said K-Step and my name on it. That was awesome. But after a while, a couple of years ago, Stephanie decided that enough was enough. And so in Salina, Kansas, she hosted, and again, I think she had the thought one day when we were talking, and 2 days later she had a venue and she had a plan. And she hosted a Teach Transgender workshop in Salina, Kansas. Luke and I were there. I got to kick off most of K-Steps with a keynote, enrolling people in loving the transphobia out of them and sharing our journeys. Luke was there, and Tom Witt was there. And that's when I met Liz Hammer, and that's when Lindsay Buck was there. Larry and Gary are always there. Sue Girth. There's just not that many of us, but we know each other, and Stephanie was committed to continuing to grow it. And now, there's a couple more people who sit on panels, and there's a lot more people who are a lot more involved. But if it wasn't for Stephanie Mott, that would never have happened. We are growing, and as an activist, and there's so few many of us, I will tell you that over the past couple of weeks, there have been times when I felt like the universe has just kicked us in the teeth. I feel like you just took out our quarterback, and not now. But the other thing that Stephanie Mott and I had in common is a very powerful spiritual relationship. Where she talked about God, I talk about the universe. Where she talked religion, I talk metaphysics, but we were always talking about the same thing. And what I know is that I have faith, and so did she. And I know that Stephanie Mott would not exit this plane unless she knew she could do a lot more from the other side. So I have faith and I have hope and a knowing that her legacy will live on, and posthumously she may have a bigger impact than she's ever had. Most importantly, I thank Stephanie Mott for getting to be the blessing of her, the witness of her life over the last 10 years, getting to hear her story over and over again and hearing it evolve. She was a gift to me and a gift to my life and a gift to any person who encountered her. I want to leave you with a quote that I ended every one of my K-Step talks with over the last 5 years, and it was one of Stephanie's favorite. It's a quote by Anais Nin, and it goes like this. "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Every transgender person who has come out of the closet knows that feeling. Thank you, Stephanie Mott, for being willing to blossom and continuing to bloom and bloom and bloom. Thank you."
So Annette Billings could not be with us today today, but she wrote a poem that I would like to share with you for Stephanie. And by the way of Pedro, if you're in the room, make your way to the front. Toes painted activist red. Where she's now fluttering, there will likely be no resting in peace for Stephanie. What with all the things yet left to be done? She'll need to organize a bevy of celestial committees and give her input on proposed angel rallies so things on heaven and earth flow more smoothly. She'll put her stamp on vital happenings and suggest any streets of gold be cashed in to fully fund a charity. Her idea of heaven would be working and working until all the work is done, and then flipping on a KU game from the best seat ever while she gets her toes painted in activist red. I met Stephanie on my first day as the new minister at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Topeka about 4.5 years ago. Over that time, we worked together in worship, at Topeka Pride, on Transgender Remembrance Day, and so many more ways in church, in the community, and at the Capitol. She was a friend, a colleague, and a light in times of challenge. I miss her. She left these words, which some of you have seen already, that her sisters asked that I read. If the unthinkable should happen, if the unspeakable is said, if God should call me home, don't think of me as dead. What I've found, it cannot die, no matter what's ahead. Take from me no sorrow, choose the joy instead. For when you touched my soul, all my sorrow fled. If the unthinkable should happen, if the unspeakable is said, if God should call me home, just smile and know that now I have some different wings to spread. But this is the community that Stephanie built. All of you right here and all of you watching from other places around the country. And we move forward today after work and into the work that she laid out for us, the work that we are called to do in service of the beloved community. Stephanie knew, as Bell Hooks says, that beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation. By each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. Stephanie's life became an affirmation of the strength and beauty of human diversity, the opportunity to embrace one another without guile and in full authenticity and even vulnerability. Her conviction in a loving God that condemns no one, and the possibility that we might each find one another through love and listening as a legacy we must carry with us. When we leave here today, may we find ourselves open and willing to do the work we are called to do. Or, as Holly Near says it, may we live in a world where the children see more clearly and the elders become more wise, where the winds of change caress us even though it burns our eyes. And may we lift one another to the light through confusion and fear, and may we hold each other in times of sorrow and share the awe and wonder of being alive. A mighty thank you to the singers who came to create our community choir, to our pianist, John, and our leaders, David, and we're just not going to be able to do all the names here. Thank you to everyone for being here. A quick reminder that you are welcome to come to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Topeka for a potluck and more informal gathering. If you have a story you want to share, there'll be an open mic and just an opportunity to be in community. So, to Susan Harper, to Janine Silsby, and to David for leading us in our choir, and to John, and to all of our speakers today, and all of the people in Stephanie's life who shared stories tonight, we say thank you. Go in peace, go in love, and do what Stephanie would do. And if you're Tom, remember to ask what she would tell you not to do. Blessings to each of you.